Wednesday, 13th of September 2023. Another run of night shifts at work made bearable by some great podcasts. I'm carrying on with listening to the great audio drama Breaker Whiskey, written by, starring, produced and directed by Lauren Shippen. Lauren posted a video on Instagram that I saw where she was talking about feedback that she had received from the superb show, The Bright Sessions, that's been complete a couple of years ago now. Some people were saying how they loved the show, but not the characters that were from the LGBTQ community. These people need to piss off because they are obviously not worth a shit. There's the expletive warning. Sorry. The episode of Feedback with Earbuds from August 15th had the theme of graduate school giving suggestions for podcasts that will be helpful for students. Beauty Unlocked from September the 6th saw Carissa look at the way ancient Egyptians used makeup, even using some things that weren't the best safety-wise, just poisons and such. The Countdown from September the 5th saw Wayne and Paul looking at The Equalizer 3, starring Denzel Washington. Another film that shows that Hollywood is putting most of its money into making adaptations of old properties, in this case, a superb TV series from the 80s that starred Edward Woodward and featured an incredible soundtrack by Stuart Copeland. Yes, Stuart Copeland, who was the drummer for The Police. I don't know if the films have got anything to do with that or anything, because I've not seen any of the Equalizer films, so I don't know if it uses the same music or what. A Breath of Fresh Air from September the 7th saw Sandy having a great chat with the 1980s musical legend that is, or music icon that is, Nick Kershaw, which was fascinating. 52 minutes is a great length, but he's done so much in his career that couldn't be covered over that 52 minutes. For instance, what wasn't covered was the fact that he played guitar on the Elton John classic song Nikita, and he was a musician and singer for a Tony Banks project, Tony Banks being one of the main guys from Genesis. The best songwriter from Genesis, in my opinion, but that's probably just me. Learning More from September the 7th saw Russ being joined by Professor Shannon O'Brien to discuss some superb potential problems relating to relatives of presidents. How did I even put that sentence together? I don't know. John F. Kennedy Jr. caused a lot of trouble for the Secret Service at the White House. And there was also a story about the illegitimate son of Benjamin Franklin, as well as more stories. Fascinating. I've continued listening to The Rise of King Asilas, although I really should get a move on, as there are one hell of a lot of episodes so far. Nearly 90 of them at the moment, and it's counting. It's just, yeah. There are some possible paranormal and extraterrestrial aspects to it as well. Turn the page. As a quick aside, the anniversary of the first showing of Star Trek happened over the past week, and I wrote a relatively basic blog post about it and my lifelong love of the franchise. Just look for Marv's midlife meanderings on anywhere, really. Just do a search for it in any search engine and follow it and have a look if you're that way inclined. It includes more detailed notes about my listening at work and the shows that I listen to and details of those shows, if anyone's interested in more detail. I need to get more episodes of Strange New Worlds watched, although I'm worried about the musical episode, if I'm being honest. Mind you, I will say the musical episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer was classic. I listened to the latest episode of Amiga Star 7. Woo, talking about sci-fi. I never meant to do that transition. Well done, Marv. Which continues to be incredibly entertaining and creative. The same goes for me listening to more of the audio drama Neon Shadows, the paranormal detective noir series. Face the Music, an Electric Light Orchestra song-by-song podcast, saw the Erics looking at the weird Out There song, The Girl Outside by The Move, a song that I actually quite like because it's out there and there's a certain music hall quality to it. Phil spoke about the game The Witcher 3 on the PlayStation 4 for the show Deleted Saves. I didn't actually write that in my notes, that the name of the show I was listening to. But yeah, The Witcher is a franchise that I haven't had anything to do with, and I think I probably should. What do people think I should start with, considering that my the most recent game system that I have is a PlayStation 2, and I can't afford to buy anything new. Holidays After Dark from September the 5th saw Kristin giving us the story behind Labor Day, as well as the history of some of the decorations that people have at Halloween. Everything Everywhere Daily from August the 3rd, 2020, featured in great detail the history of the British Empire and what is still part of the empire, which surprised me as a Brit, but, you know, unfortunately, there's still some of that remaining there of the British Empire, and I will leave it there as somebody who doesn't agree with a lot of the things that we did back in the day, or people that call themselves British, especially royals who are supposedly British but come from other countries. I listened to a trailer for the first time with Matt Everett, a show that was a BBC radio series that they have chosen a few select episodes of to place into a podcast services or onto podcast services. I wish they would have put every episode up there, really, because Matt is a great presenter who has a great rapport with musicians, particularly, maybe helped by the fact that he was a member of the band Menswear back in the day, Britpop band who were sort of like, you know, there weren't Oasis, there weren't Blur, there weren't Pulp, but they were there, you know, and they had a few hits. So I don't mean that to sound nasty or awful or put them down, but it's how it was. Fringe History looks like a show that looks into the history of the strange, reports therein, and the cool similarities that are there as well. Yeah, I didn't really know how to write that down. The episode of The Strange Brew from September the 8th saw Jason chatting with former Status Quo drummer John Coughlin, which was so good to listen to, especially after having recently listened to Paul's chat on Vintage Rock Pod with Francis Rossi of Status Quo. I finally listened to The Dial-Up, which is another well-written audio drama that includes a call centre, time travel, and so much more. I could go into more detail, but I'm not going to because it's like spoiler territory with that. It's, well, great voice acting, narrative, and a show that has no slow bits at all. I listened to every episode in that one shift. I discovered the show Stardate, which is a fun show that talks about cool astronomical stuff, and it sort of reminds me of The Sky at Night, which Brits would know, but probably not people abroad, which lasted for, God, over 60 years, I think it lasted, where basically it talked about, you know, things that were going on in the sky and what the look, you know, telescope and give like reports of what's going on in space. And, you know, pretty cool thinking back to it. Also a good thing to fall asleep to because it was on really late. It came on before it came on the BBC before they had the, you know, the national anthem at the end to close down the station back in the day when stations used to close down for the night. A great chat was to be found on the September 29th, 2022 episode of My Classic Album, or My Classical Bum, if you read it another way. He chatted with Vicky Sarakis, the lead singer of Sick Sense, about Fallen, the debut album by Evanescence. No, don't come out with that joke, Martin. Nobody will know. You won't bring them back to life, or whatever. An episode of Top and Most of the Pop and Most from September the 10th was interesting to listen to. It was an episode that didn't feature myself, but instead featured my co-hosts, Ed Chen and Kit O'Toole, with a live audience at the Beatles Fest in Chicago. If the money comes about, for any, look at by any pure bit of luck or anything, I hope to eventually make Beatles Fest in Chicago at some point or wherever, and join them both to do a live show with the three of us there at some point, which would be really cool. Scary as heck, but really cool. Spoilers, I'll be mentioning in a future episode about something similar that's going on very soon. The Jerry Anderson podcast from September 11th included a fascinating chat between co-host Richard James and the Space 1999 actor Anton Phillips. Interesting because you get the story behind the scenes of when you get actors like that who've been in productions that were produced by Jerry Anderson and directed or written and that by Jerry and his ex-wife, Sylvia. You get the little bits that go on behind the scenes and the intricacies that you wouldn't get from otherwise, which is really just fascinating. Other shows listened to include a great chat that my friend Ken Sweeney had with historian Nadia Dobraniaski, close enough, on his show The Comfortable Spot, and so much more. Thursday, September 14th, 2023, addendum. A new episode of When They Was Fab was recorded on Tuesday night, where me and Ed started looking at other acts who were arranged or managed by Brian Epstein, of which there were many. It's a subject that we will go back to because it's surprising how many acts were in the list, and I didn't personally know that he managed the Moody Blues as well. The latest episode of Pods Like Us came out on Sunday, where I spoke with Chris Chalfon about Chat Pods, a social network for podcast listeners, and eventually we'll have more for podcasters as well. It allows threads to discuss subjects mentioned in podcast episodes as part of its uniqueness, which is really helpful. And as somebody who does, the occasional chat show, group chat about specific subjects, it'd be fascinating as a podcaster to get involved in these post-show chats on these threads and see where it goes to from there. Because, as I said to Chris in the episode, it's like, we as podcasters and presenters are introducing people to these subjects, and then they go from there and learn more. Essentially, we're just introducing them to the basics of it and then leave them to go out and be, inspired, essentially. And for those people watching the video, I'm sorry that I keep doing that with my hand and gesticulating. If it was 3D, it'd be probably scaring the living daylights out of you. Aha, James Bond thing there. But anyway, where were we going? Anyway, that's it for this week's the Pod Files podcast version. I'll chat with you all next week. Take care. Bye.